Hi everyone, welcome to my channel. Finally, I've been talking about doing this forever and we're finally getting the ball rolling on YouTube. My name is Amy and I'm the founder of Root and Response. So before I dive into the subject of nervous system regulation and healing from complex neural circuit symptoms, I want to tell you all a little bit about myself and share some of my own personal story of recovering from head to toe, full body neural circuit symptoms. I actually started out sharing my story on TikTok, and eventually that evolved into coaching in the mind body space and offering peer support and mentorship to people who are navigating their own nervous system recovery journey. If you would have told me 5 years ago that this is what I'd be doing for work, I think I would have been completely baffled. I'll be real with you all, when it comes to neural circuit symptoms and nervous system regulation, ignorance is bliss. If you know, you know. Most people don't go searching for this kind of content like willy-nilly unless they or someone they loved have lived through it themselves. But it's one of those situations where once you understand how this stuff works, how we get here, and what we can do to address it, you can't unsee it. That's one of the reasons so many people who recover wind up sharing their stories and educating in this space. Not to mention, I think there's a big gap in information. It's incredibly impactful just going through this experience. And those of us who have lived through it, I think understand firsthand how hard it can be to find that information that actually makes sense when you're in the middle of it. And I'll talk more about that in another video, but today I just wanted to tell you about myself and what my experience looked like. Before I do that though, I do want to preface it with this. I want to say something that I tell my clients all the time. And that is that a lot of people assume neural circuit symptoms happen because someone is weak. I felt this about myself. But looking back with hindsight, I don't think that that's true at all. I think this stuff happens to people who, quite honestly, have had to be strong for way too long. It happens to people who have developed a maladaptive tolerance for discomfort. They're people who keep pushing through and people who learn how to soldier on no matter what. That's always been me, and probably 95% of the people I work with, if not all. As is the case with many of us, I initially thought all of this happened completely out of the blue, which is funny to me now looking back. There were so many signs, but when I developed a massive onset of neural circuit symptoms in 2024, I really described it as happening overnight. And it really felt that way in the moment because of the sheer volume and intensity of my symptoms when they finally kind of exploded. But now that I know what I know, I can see that that whole story started so much earlier. Looking back, I can see signs of nervous system dysregulation throughout different periods of my life, literally starting in early childhood. I grew up, and again, trauma does not have to be a factor, but I find, you guys, that it often is. I grew up in a home that was both physically and emotionally unsafe, which I believe was one of many predisposing factors for nervous system dysregulation. I had episodes of DPDR, aka depersonalization, derealization, literally as young as 5 to 6 years old, maybe earlier, but that's what I can really remember. And bouts of severe air hunger as a teen. I had panic attacks, sleep disturbances. I had a stretch of wildly intense insomnia in high school and a lot more. And as I got older, it persisted in kind of intermittent episodes. Around 2018, adult, had kids, post-divorce, the episodes started kind of ramping up. And I had a pretty scary period where I was dealing with a ton of just unexplained heart palpitations, chest pain, chest tightness, and heart PVCs, that kind of skipped beat sort of feeling. And at that time, I never really connected any of those dots. I just thought they were isolated incidents. And like many people, I went through the process of medical clearance, which is wise to do. There were a few, small findings here and there, but nothing that explained what I was experiencing. And overall, I looked like a healthy person with a few kind of normal variations in imaging and lab work. And at that time, I wasn't sleeping particularly well. I wasn't taking the best care of myself. So it wasn't surprising to see some inflammation markers show up occasionally, a few things askew here and there, but there was never anything that pointed to like a major disease process. So I did the thing that I always did and that I was very good at doing, and I kept going. I pushed through, including many massive life stressors, all while feeling varying levels of symptoms and just kind of off. And I continued to do that all the way into 2024. As that year progressed, I found myself dealing with more and more life stressors, more and more physical stressors, and subsequently more and more symptoms and sensations. My heart palpitations were becoming more frequent. I was waking up throughout, the night. My mind was just constantly racing, constantly ruminating intrusive thoughts. I had anxious thoughts that would get stuck and replay over and over again. Sometimes I'd spend like my full 25-minute everything shower just caught in a thought spiral about something happening to me or one of my kids. I'd be mentally rehearsing scenarios, trying to predict outcomes, trying to solve problems that didn't even exist and probably never would. And though I recognized my stress levels were high and my body was feeling it and those things weren't helping me and those habits weren't helping me, I had absolutely no idea they were connected to my physical symptoms to the level that they were. Even still, I did try to change things up. I look back and I give myself some credit, right? Like right direction, maybe not the best execution. I tried adding things, okay, like crocheting, meditation, working out, ashwagandha, every form of magnesium on the planet, deep breathing, a handful of other like stress management techniques. And honestly, some of them were helpful to varying degrees, but none of them addressed the actual root of the issue, which was that I had been living in a constant state of fight or flight for most of my life. And my behaviors, quite literally everything about me reflected that. At this point, my symptoms were still, I would say, relatively moderate. And though they were on my mind like pretty often, they hadn't fully taken over my life yet. I wasn't panicked because there were still only a handful of them. And I was kind of finally willing to entertain the possibility that stress might actually be playing a role, which not surprisingly did help a bit. When I stopped fighting the idea so hard, my nervous system actually did seem to settle a little. I started sleeping a little better and my mood leveled out and I actually started feeling hopeful, but I still, of course, didn't fully understand yet what specifically about that made me feel better. I went to bed on October 8th, 2024, ironically, feeling more optimistic than I had in a long time, but again, still missing what I think are some very crucial pieces of understanding neural circuit symptoms. And that is quite literally the point where everything changed. I'll be sharing a part 2 here shortly, so follow along. And if any of this resonates with you and you want to learn more about recovering from neural circuit symptoms, check out my free ebook on my website, which is linked below. I'm really grateful to connect with you. I'm so excited to finally be here on YouTube. And you guys, I will see you in part 2, where I'll talk about the most intense symptomatic episode that finally brought me and my life to a screeching halt. And don't worry, the story does have a happy ending.